Chapter 9 The Colors of Light and Darkness. I was back in Rosium. I didn't know why, but for some reason I had Gande in mind when I summoned the portal. I detached my shoelaces from my belt and put my shoes back on. Seeing as I was standing in a bed of snow, it was the wisest thing to do. I was standing in front of a house, but it wasn't until I looked around that I recognized the area. The snow had lessened, but it seemed like Gande was still simply a cold place. Even the summer couldn't change that. I entered the house and stumbled upon 3 skeletons. I startled a bit and was reminded of the horror that came upon Gande 8 months ago. Poor Barton, poor Roland. Perhaps it even was Roland's family, but I never got to know if it was them. I wondered if the sailors were still alive. I wondered if Inflatus was still standing. Gande was, which was a consolation. I couldn't see far enough ahead yet or see the destruction of Dragonia. I didn't expect it to suddenly be back either. The moment I stepped through the portal, I remembered everything that happened 5 to 8 months ago. Everything. I kept the platinum armor to protect me from the cold, even though the metallic protection didn't help much. I felt my body freeze and could barely move my arms and legs. Apparently, the northern part of Rosium never cooled down that much. I was trying to cross the ocean. I wanted to save as much strength and energy as possible, so with every step I took, I made the water underneath my feet turn to ice. I kept getting closer to Inflatus and was glad to see it was still standing. I hoped to reach Dragonia at one point. I didn't expect much, but I wasn't sure of where to spend my days. I just had to get one more confirmation of everything I loved really being gone. The ice underneath my feet kept getting thinner every time I made another step. I was weak and couldn't control my powers very well. Before I could prepare for the scenario, the weight of me and my armor made the ice break and I plunged into the water. I undid myself of the armor to lose weight and try to swim back up, but I didn't have the strength. Eventually, I just gave up. It was cold, dark, and I didn't have the perseverance to go on anymore. But it didn't feel like dying. It didn't feel like it was the end. And I was right. Something grabbed me and pulled me out of the water. When I could breathe again, I asked the spirit if the end was near. Is it time? Almost. Patience, he replied. I was dragged through the sky by the spirit holding on to my hand. I couldn't feel anything though. He didn't sound angry nor malignant, but calm. Though he wouldn't remain that way. I was dragged along for many kilometers. I tried to turn my head to be able to see the land. We were headed into a direction that would make us pass Dragonia, but I never got to be able to see it. We'll see each other again soon, Drake. Sleep tight. The next thing I saw was a beach. I was somewhere I'd never been before. Everything around me was as black as soot. I'd apparently lost consciousness and ended up there afterwards. I wondered if there was something I was not allowed to see. Where am I? I asked. Welcome to Kratos. I remembered Calypso talking about that place, a dark, dead place with ever-active volcanoes. I looked up behind me and noticed the row of volcanoes. They weren't very steep, causing them to be fairly climbable. Why am I here? Isn't this a remarkable place to die? No, not really. The spirit chuckled. Just get it over with. Would you like to know what pain feels like? You're kidding, right? I was suddenly pulled up in the air. I felt like I was choking. Something grabbed a hold of my neck and I kept rising. For a moment, I stopped rising and hovered in the air. I could barely breathe. Suddenly, I was smashed into the congealed lava and the hard, rough surface hurt my back. I was lucky to get away with broken bones or bruises. I laid on my back and looked at the top of the volcano and stared at the red sky. I could hear the waves of a turbulent sea. I'd never been to Kratos, but it wasn't exactly a comforting place. I recalled where it was supposed to be positioned when I remembered the map Calypso gave to us. Next to Dragonia with an ocean in between, and about as big as Venus. Wait, next to Dragonia? I suddenly realized what I wasn't allowed to see along the way to Kratos, while I was put to sleep. A tiny spark of hope was given to me, and before I'd give up, I needed to do one more thing. I was determined to find out whether or not Dragonia was really gone, and whether or not that would mean my friends were really gone. I managed to get back up and crawl my way to the top of the volcano. The row of volcanoes was dense and they were so close together that there was no getting through to the other side in between the volcanoes. I tried to keep climbing, but I didn't get very far because I kept getting pulled back. Coward, where do you think you're going? I'm the coward, show yourself! I hadn't made it even a meter further and I had no idea how to avoid the spirit I couldn't touch, let alone see. I couldn't see its vague form of heat waves either. A few seconds passed and I couldn't even hear it anymore. Show yourself! No reply. I already know who you are. All of a sudden, the spirit appeared in the form of heat waves again, right in front of me. I could see his expression and his former calmness, and the act of sanity had disappeared. He was back to the lunatic I knew him as. Wouldn't you like to know how I'm still alive? I don't care. You killed my mother. What would your death mean if you die not knowing why? I know why. You're a monster. You're bloody sick. I sure had fun, though. You're actually proud of what you've become. Why shouldn't I be? I'm all powerful. Nothing can defeat me anymore. So why wait that long to kill me? Why would anyone kill the fun prematurely? Did you really have fun destroying everything I loved? Uttermost, actually. Just end me. Where's the fun in that? First, I still need to tell you how I'm still alive. As I said, I don't care. Suddenly, I was dragged up in the air again and choked. I will make you! He was exactly like how I remembered him again. I was released and tried to catch a breath. You're a coward, Ralph. It takes a soul to become invincible. I wasn't as foolish as to not take any measures against repercussions in case of my defeat. That bastard of a McLean, clever move using Sir Ponce's former greatest weapon. Before my full petrification, I used whatever means I had left to give my soul to a greater cause. A truly remarkable cause. A wicked cause. You are going to live a cursed life. What is a little curse in exchange for so much power? What does it matter? You have destroyed the very land you were going to rule. I looked at the lines that formed its expression and tried to get a hint from it regarding Dragonia's status, but he wouldn't bite. I don't wish to rule the land anymore. Really? Then what's your goal now? To see you suffer as I did. Like you did. Because I made sure you couldn't tyrannize the people of Rosium. You're pathetic. Pathetic, you say? Yes, pathetic. I wouldn't call my accomplishments pathetic. Greatness doesn't equal value. Your greatness led to the destruction of so much. Your accomplishments are nothing. Oh, just you wait. I will hurt you until you beg for mercy. Until you beg for death. I already am asking you to kill me. But if you're not going to do it, I will. And he calls me pathetic. I know I am, and I don't care. You took everything from me. Well, prepare to lose more. His silhouette approached me, but I had to demand something. Show yourself! He stopped and decided he had nothing to lose. Very well, then. His physical body slowly became visible. A scorched black skeletal hand appeared, and another one, but petrified and made of stone. The rest of his monstrous body slowly revealed itself. A black skeletal body, partially made of stone, appeared before me. As his face was revealed, at last, I recognized a part of his face that hadn't completely withered away yet, besides the bone that was showing and the side of his head being petrified. His eyes had never changed. I had never forgotten those. A red glow surrounded them. As his barely recognizable body appeared before me, a cloak of dark particles engulfed him and formed the rest of his body. But there he was at last, at the final chapter of my life, at the finish line, at the end. Mordor. I take it you prefer me invisible, he said with an evil smile. I take being able to look you in your wicked eyes above all. How coincidental. Me too. Mordor aimed at me and pulled me up in the air. A terrible pain went through my entire body. I felt like I was constantly stabbed. I screamed like never before. How'd you like my monsters? The Balrog nearly got you, didn't it? He was playing with me like I was some sort of doll. Every time he moved his fingers, I could feel something piercing my body. My arms, legs, and torso hurt like hell. And he just kept laughing wickedly and telling me about his accomplishments. And the Ice Age, wasn't that great? I just couldn't stop screaming. I was smashed into the ground and my mind slowly went blank. Now, there's no fun in hurting you if there's no blood to be spilled. Mordor started hurting me in different ways now. Instead of bringing me pure pain, he actually started destroying my body. He tackled my arms and legs, and I felt like actual knives were jammed into my limbs. I could see the blood spatter, and I kept wishing it'd be over soon. I had started to bleed to death. I was the one who led you to that book about the Ice Age. You think it was pure coincidence that you found it right before the prophecy would come true? I honestly couldn't care about whatever he had to say. In fact, I couldn't even pay attention to his words. The prophecy even your mother could not prevent, and when you brought that very prophecy to your mother, she knew it was her time. Mordor stopped attacking me for a few seconds, just so that his words would hurt the most. Pitiful, weak Ariana. Don't speak of her, I tried to say. She could never kill me, and that was her greatest flaw. Your mother was a weakling. She was never qualified to rule the land. I was. But she was too selfish. You're telling lies. It cost me all the strength I had to speak while losing so much blood. I'm telling you what happened all those years ago. He was in the way, you know. Mordor looked at me and expected a new kind of reaction from me. But I had no idea what he was talking about. Oh, he doesn't know. You see, when naive little Oriana fled from her responsibilities, she made a foolish mistake. Images flashed before me. I gained the feeling that I'd heard the story before. She was the reason for the death of someone you never knew. I remembered. It was the book who told me that story. I suddenly remembered the dream I had all those months back, about the girl and the boy. It couldn't be. Say, I'm curious. What lie did she feed you regarding him? Car accident? Early heart attack? No. Drake, I killed your grandfather. Everything came into place. The dream, the story told to me. My mother and Mordor were the children from that dream. They were once friends. And when she fled from him during the crowning, the one who protected her with his life was my very grandfather. My mother never told me a lie about him, because I never asked about how he died. I knew my mother, and I thought if I ever asked, she would have told me the truth. I hated Mordor for what he did, yes, even more than before, but it didn't cause me more sadness. That was exactly what he wanted. No, it only made me more furious. But then I heard something that filled my hatred even more. Say, would you like to know what happened to your father? I was still bleeding out and incapable of talking properly, but what Mordor said scared me. I wanted to call him out for a monster, but couldn't bring out the words. I really didn't want the last person I cared for, whom I didn't know the status of, to be taken from me as well. But it was inevitable. Here, see for yourself. Mordor leaned forward as he looked down at me before he lowered and raised my chin with one of his skeletal fingers, to make sure I was looking right at him. As I looked him in the eyes, I was taken away. I suddenly ended up at a familiar place, and I knew right away what was happening. I saw Haru chasing a man in a raincoat down the streets. I knew where the connection was, and I remembered why my father wore a raincoat during one of my nightmares. I then knew why I kept seeing this scene over and over again, but it wasn't until that day I finally got to see the man's face. For a moment, I could see through Haru's eyes. I saw what he saw that day. Why did he never tell me? Did Mordor keep him from doing so? I feared the inevitable worst reveal possible, and when the moment came that Haru saw who the man was, it meant that I did too. My father died that day. There, now you know your father died for nothing, just like all the others. I was back. The pain returned in an instant. For a year, I had him under my control. I got your miserable father to beg for his death, so I granted it. Your intentions lead us all to death. You've just redeemed him. Everyone you love is dead, Drake, and soon so will you be. You think that all this can bring me more sorrow? All you'll ever get out of me is a big go to hell. Without the gods, there's no hell for me to go to, is there? I've escaped once more, in case you've forgotten. I didn't understand what he meant with the gods being gone. Of course, you don't know? What does the title of a god mean when you're not immortal? Why does it not make me a god when I killed the very gods themselves? What? I killed the gods! You're bluffing. Wouldn't you wish I was? Where do you think they've been all this time? The gods were a joke to begin with. Whatever you are, whatever you can do, you will never know friendship or love, and that makes you weak. Darkness will consume you, and it will break you. You will lose, even if I die, even if we're all gone, eventually you will lose. It might not be by my hands, and frankly, I don't care. But you will never win. I've heard that before, Drake. I was dying. I really thought it was the end. Mordor came closer, looking me in the eyes and said, I've already won. He started laughing wickedly again. I saw the people I loved flash by. Mordor killed each and every one of them. I felt the tears of sorrow and physical pain slide down my face. I could feel them hit the ground when my hand sensed the vibrations. I could even feel teardrops hit the earth. I sensed the magma underneath the earth. It gave me an idea, and I decided to try one more thing. I was simply too fed up with anger. Back to me! Back me for your death! I tried to forget the pain. I smiled and chuckled like I'd lost my mind, but it was only to distract him. I kept my hands on the congealed lava as I tried to reach all the way down, to feel the vibrations caused by the sloshing mass of magma. I knew I could do what I wanted to do. I wasn't that boy who just started bending flames anymore. I couldn't just control the elements by that time. I'd gotten so much smarter and tougher as well. I knew what I was capable of, and I knew how to get out of dicey situations. And even though I wanted everything to end, I still felt like I needed to see if Dragonia was really gone. I had to see it for myself. And for that to happen, I had to buy time. I made the ground shake, and Mordor quickly understood what I was doing, not knowing it was just part of a distraction. The volcano started roaring, and it was a matter of seconds before it erupted. You know that won't do me any harm. I'm invincible. I know. You'll kill yourself. I know. You're crazy. I know. Mordor took a few steps backwards. He looked up at the volcano, waiting for it to erupt. While I got him distracted, I moved the water from the shore towards me. While avoiding Mordor's feet so he wouldn't realize it, I summoned the water. I engulfed myself once I'd gathered enough. What are you doing? I couldn't distract him for long, but luckily, he didn't know what I was doing. The water surrounding me covered my wounds. The salt was hurting and it made me scream again. You've lost it. I was glad to hear Mordor say that. It proved that he had no idea what my real intentions were. Even though the salt caused immense pain, I used the water to heal my wounds. And it worked. The cuts in my skin were mending, stopping the bleeding. I kept surprising myself. From bending platinum to manipulating electrical currents and using water to heal fatal wounds, I wondered what else I could do. Even though my wounds were healed, I still lost a lot of blood. Internally, I wasn't exactly alright either. I felt lightheaded and weak. You think it matters? Mordor asked. I tried to get up. I wanted to face him with both my feet on the ground. But the time came. The volcano finally erupted. An enormous cloud of smoke ejected, reached for thousands of meters into the air and merged with the dark red clouds. It was followed up by magma emerging from the earth and becoming lava that slowly came our way. But none of us moved. Fine. Go get your closure. When the lava reached me, I made sure it went past me, but Mordor didn't move. I kept looking at him, but he just smiled. My head started hurting right before Mordor's body succumbed to the scorching lava. His bones melted and his skin caught on fire. Slowly he was burning away, and eventually there was nothing left of his body. There was no way he was dead. That couldn't be it, right? Anywhere I took my next step, I moved the lava aside. I focused on cooling the earth underneath it in an instant. It was a remarkable power to be able to control the temperature within every element. I made a way for myself to the top of the volcano in order to get a view of Dragonia. It did cost me quite a lot of time to climb the volcano, but I didn't seem to have to be in any rush. When I made it to the top, I could finally see the other side of the ocean. I looked into the direction of where Dragonia was supposed to be. Where it was supposed to be. It was just the ocean. In the far distance on my left, I could see the vague beginning of land. It seemed like it was part of Venus, but the rest of it, Urania and Dragonia, were completely gone. I couldn't see Gordania either, but perhaps it was too far away. The last bit of hope faded when I even saw tips of Dragonia's forest stick out above the water. I then knew for sure it was really gone, and it meant that my friends were gone. My plan to make the volcano erupt wasn't just to distract Mordor. It served as a beacon, hoping those who saw it would know it was me. But there was no one who could have seen it. There was no one left. I really wanted to give up. While sitting on the top of the volcano, making sure the lava couldn't harm me, I stared at the sea. It was an unusual sight to see the lava merge with the water. I'd never seen anything like it, let alone see a volcano erupt. Knowing I couldn't be harmed, it was only a beautiful sight. I felt rested, knowing there wasn't anything left I had to fight for. I had no obligations. I was free. Are we done? Mordor stood behind me again. Of course, he never really got harmed. Yeah. I stood up and turned around. I smiled. A smile? You know, dying's not so bad. Mordor seemed conflicted. He wanted to do everything he could to mentally destroy me and realized death wouldn't even be fitting. I already wondered why that was his goal. He could have tortured me for an eternity if he wanted to. Was there a different reason I needed to die? I'll make it easy for you. Goodbye, Ralph. I looked at the very place I used to love most. It was my home. What I wouldn't give to see it again, I thought. What I wouldn't give to see my friends again. My mother, my father, my sister. I closed my eyes. I prepared to boost myself to get high enough in the air for it to do its job. I leaned forward and launched myself into the sky. I was calm during those final seconds. I felt at rest. But I couldn't rest yet. They say your final moment may seem like it takes forever, and it did. But it wasn't my final moment yet. So much happened during those seconds. While I had my eyes closed, I could hear all kinds of sounds. I heard Mordor shouting as if something was going wrong. I heard the sound of the wind, water freezing, and someone shouting my name. As I finally opened my eyes, I looked down at a ramp of ice before I felt someone grab me around my waist. As I turned my head, I faced someone I thought I'd never see again. Gotcha. I couldn't believe it when I saw Julia with my own eyes. I held on tight as we landed back on the ramp and slid towards the sea. As we reached the bottom and the ramp went upwards again, we found ourselves in the air, a few meters above a wooden platform. A strong wind force prevented our fall. As we landed, Julia let go of me. I laid on my back as I looked up and noticed the mast. My view changed when Harold leaned forward. You're not planning on dying on us, are you? I was overjoyed, relieved like never before, but I found it difficult to believe it to be true. I didn't move and didn't know what to say. Maya leaned forward as well, looked at me with a smile and said, Welcome back, Drake. I suddenly saw Dora come out of nowhere and dive-bombing me. I embraced her and almost knew it couldn't be an illusion. I wish my little sister was that happy to see me, Haru said. My smile disappeared in an instant. Haru had no little sister. Just kidding, ha! You should have seen your face. I laughed, something I hadn't done in a while. You douchebag. As Haru and I laughed about his twisted joke, Julia helped me back up as soon as Dora let go of me. I looked around me and saw all of my friends had gathered. As I found myself on a ship, I noticed an entire fleet behind them. Calypso was there, smiling at me. I smiled back, not knowing how to thank her for saving me. Tom stood next to her. I was glad to see they were both alright. Darren and Eros, as confident as ever. I was so glad to see them again. Chop, Doozle, Lawrence and Lenny, of course, as if they'd missed out on anything. Roland, Captain Barton and the other sailors were the last few on the same boat, along with Arian, Sapphira and Hank who were in the back. Seeing Arian safe and well gave me a wonderful feeling. He really meant a lot to me. Only then, I noticed Dragonia behind them. It never sank, it never got destroyed, everything was still there. On the other boats, I could see dwarves, elves and humans from all of Rosium. I was so moved to see everyone had come together to fight the greatest threat ever, though they had no idea what they were up against. After seeing everyone together, I knew who I did really lose. My mother and father were gone for good. And even though I was overjoyed with the fact that everyone was still alive, I could never prepare to lose them for good too. I could never go through that again, knowing for sure it would mean their end. I could only protect them as well as I could from Mordor. As we were all together again, The battle for the mythical world started once more, although this time we simply fought for our lives. What is that? Harold pointed out. I turned around and faced where he was facing. Mordor was looking at us. He wasn't moving. He didn't do anything. He simply looked at us. He seemed much angrier than ever before. As he hovered in the air, dark particles still engulfed him. They formed a cloak and two parts that seemed like wings, illustrating somewhat of a dark phoenix. Even though I recognized him from the distance, the others did not. Mordor, I said. What? Julia replied. Excuse me? Who now? Haru said, confused. They all looked at Mordor in great fear. Maya had never seen him before, and it was obvious she feared him because she didn't know him well enough, while the others feared him because they did. And he was alive. So that's Mordor, Maya said. He's the dark spirit, isn't he? Julia asked. I nodded. Right after, Mordor laughed and disappeared. The particles vanished and he was nowhere to be found. What do we do? Haru asked. I don't know, I replied. He'll kill us all if we cannot figure out how to hurt him. He's that invincible? Maya asked. I don't think even I can lay a finger on him. I think that's where you're wrong. Tom came to me. You see, you're Ariana's son. You are part of the greatest bloodline in history. Bloodline? I did some digging and I found out about another bloodline. It only makes sense. If I connect the dots, Mordor is from that bloodline. You see, Mordor is the embodiment of destruction, part of the carriers of destruction, a power that goes back thousands of years. But the people from the bloodline that came to exist with it are the carriers of creation. Your mother was the creation queen. Drake, you are the creation king. You can defeat Mordor. You're saying we're opposites. You carry a blessing, he carries a curse, and both exceed anything in the world. But a blessing can become a curse, and a curse can become a blessing. Mordor failed to turn this curse into a blessing, or rather decided not to. It is your task to decide whether or not you wish to use this blessing for good or for evil. Yes, in a way, you are opposites, but I believe the symbol of light and dark, good versus evil, is like creation and destruction. You have the power to fight him. I looked back at where Mordor was before he disappeared. I knew he was going to attack at any moment. With creation came destruction, light and darkness, fire, earth, water, and air. If I really possess the power of creation, then let's pray the light wins today. You know why the light always wins? Julia asked me as she went and stood next to me. Because the dark tends to forget friendship is our greatest weapon. I smiled. I was grateful to hear those words. We all prepared for any possible attack. Anxiously, we looked around. Oh, Drake, here. Chop came walking up to me and handed me my sword. Thank you. We started staring into the distance again. No one was at ease. I suppose the gods don't want a piece of this? I asked. The gods? Oh, Drake, I thought you knew, Calypso said. He really did it, didn't he? He defeated them. Olympus has fallen. The gods were no match. They're gone. I'm sorry, Drake. I felt revengeful after hearing what Mordor did to the gods. Even though my respect for them had decreased incredibly, I still saw them as friends. Each and every one of them. Gone. I suppose that means the prophecy on the wall was true. The age of gods really has ended. The gods were once a tale, or something people could put their faith in. I couldn't believe they were gone. Although, were they ever real? The minutes passed. It was so quiet. The volcano had stopped erupting and the lava was cooling down. Everyone seemed terrified. They had no idea what was awaiting them, but I did. Whatever I tried to come up with, I didn't know how to properly tell them what we were up against, and before I could, their fear increased majorly. I wonder, Mordor started, what would happen if you lost everyone you love all over again? And now you know it's for real. You really think you can defeat me? I could simply snap my fingers and one of your friends will die for good. Is that what you want, Drake? No? I figured. Then let's make it happen, shall we? I suddenly heard screams and shouting coming from a boat next to us. In the distance, I could see they were fighting, or rather, one person was fighting the others. A human with a sword was killing everyone around him, and I knew Mordor had him under his control. The other humans and elves on the boat jumped off into the water to get away. When the human didn't have anyone left to kill, he turned to us. He grabbed the bow and arrow from one of the elves he'd killed and aimed for us. Haru managed to step in and change the course of the arrow right after it was shot. Everyone looked at the man with a shocked and hateful expression, but I knew he couldn't help it. The human went and stood on the edge of the boat, revealed a dagger and stabbed himself in the heart. He lost his life and plunged into the water. "He can only control one at a time," I pointed out. The people around me were glad to hear that, as it meant that they had a better chance than they thought. "We need to gather." As I jumped off the boat and stepped onto Kratos, I was followed by everyone else. After everyone from my boat stepped onto the land, the last boats were still trying to get to the shore, and to speed it up, I formed waves in the water that pushed the boats towards the shore quicker. "Drake," Julia said. "It's Roland, I looked behind me and saw Roland collapse. He was in pain, but when the pain faded, his eyes were bloodshot. He looked at us with a furious expression before he suddenly came running at us. Before he could hurt us with the sword he was carrying, I blasted him away with a blow of wind. I summoned the water from the ocean and engulfed his lower body and arms, freezing the water and making him unable to move. "Pay attention to whoever he's taking over. I'll make sure they can't harm anyone, including themselves." Everyone had gathered. We all looked at each other like we were searching for a murderer among us. It was preposterous. We kept staring at each other, not knowing what else we could do. "This is fun," Mordor said, who was still nowhere to be found. I tried to think of a better solution, but what could I do if he remained invisible? We kept staring at each other, ready to call out the one he was taking over. I had the feeling he would go for Calypso, making me have to resort to something other than water, seeing as she could free herself. I was ready to use the congealed lava and lock someone to the ground, but there was someone else I didn't think about. I realized it just a little bit too late. I looked at Julia and it seemed like we both realized the same thing at the same time. Oh no. It was me. I was next. It wasn't long until I lost myself. Whatever happened during those minutes, I was filled in later. The way your eyes kept changing colors was an unusual sight. They were flickering like they were fighting to become as bloodshot as like the others. But it didn't work. He took control of you. The scariest part was when you started talking. Or well, when Mordor did. You said some disturbing things. Actually, I'll just say he did it. You shouldn't feel sorry. He first approached Roland and said, "Roland, poor soul. Say, how does it feel to be frozen? I bet your family could tell you all about that. Oh wait, they can't." Roland looked at you with a furious look, but it was Gregory who ran towards you and tried to attack you. He was blown away by Haru, who said, "Don't touch him. You'll kill Drake, not him." He turned to Calypso. "Hi, Kelly. You remember me very well, don't you? How's life without your little guardian angel?" "How dare you speak of her, you monster?" Calypso replied. You turned to Darren. "The man I have a bone to pick with. You've caused me quite the trouble. How does it feel to know you failed? To know each of your attempts was in vain?" And then you turned to Haru. "And who do we have here?" "Haru, my friend. I'm not your friend," Haru said. "Those closest to you knew to separate you from Mordor easily." "Pity. Then I suppose I wouldn't mind if you were the first to die." "You're not Drake. You'll never be like him. You're sick." "Yeah, he said that as well." You turned to Maya. "Did you know your father is responsible for causing me a lot of trouble? I was thinking I'd kill him first. Wouldn't that be fun? Right after you two reunited. How cute. I feel like throwing up." You turned to Julia. "Dear Julia, oh sweetheart, you still love me?" "You have no shame, do you?" she replied. "Drake doesn't love you, honey. All those months and he never came for you. You call that love?" Julia smirked and said, "As if you know love." You turned to everyone. "So what's next? You're going to harm your hero. Your hero just tried to kill himself. What do you think of that?" "You think we don't know why?" Haru said. "How much did you take from him? Everything?" "Not enough." As you looked at Haru, a ring of fire formed around you. It kept getting bigger and bigger until everyone had to back off. Chop enclosed you in a dome of sand and congealed lava, which managed to kill the flames. After you broke out with these, you turned to Chop. "We have a volunteer." You summoned a flame above your hand and approached him. Chop seemed frightened of you. He'd never really seemed scared until that day. He enclosed himself in a small dome of earth to protect himself from you. You emitted flames from your hands and tried to burn through it. Everyone could hear Chop scream, but no one did anything. No one knew what to do. But there was someone. "Drake, stop, please!" It was your sister, Dora. She was holding Darren's gun, one he had gotten back in DC, which we found out Darren was carrying with him because he found out how to use his metal bending capabilities in order to manipulate bullets. Darren proposed to give Dora at least one way to protect herself if it was needed. It wasn't without caution, though. Darren took the time to teach her how to use it. Anyhow, she pointed the gun at you and ordered you to stop. You did, to our rejoice. Only, you turned to Dora. You walked up to her without fear. "Little Dora, I'd almost forgotten you were here. Are you going to shoot your brother? Go ahead, pull the trigger." "Stop, don't come any closer." But you didn't listen. You kept walking up to her. You bent through your knees and looked right at her. She was crying and seemed terribly afraid of what was happening to her brother. "Do it." You leaned forward and pressed your head against the tip of the gun, provoking her. "Come on, kill me." "You're pathetic, Ralph," Julia said. "She is just a kid." You replied with a chuckle, but she kept focusing on Dora. "Put it down, will you, before you hurt someone." Dora lowered the gun. She knew it couldn't do much good. "How much does Drake care for you? Would it hurt him good if I'd kill you first?" But Dora didn't reply. She kept sobbing. "Tell me, do you love your brother?" Everyone was surprised by what followed. Dora embraced you. You seemed confused at first, but then again, it wasn't you. But Dora caused something to change. Her touch was expelling Mordor from your mind and body. She kept holding you tight while you screamed from the pain of fighting him. A purple glow flowed and shone on both yours and your sister's body. It wasn't clear to what was happening, but Mordor couldn't hold on and eventually was cut off from you. You should remember the rest. When I was freed from Mordor's control, I found myself in Dora's arms. She was crying. I soon realized what most likely had happened. "Drake, are you okay?" she asked sobbingly. "Dora, I'm so sorry." How?" I looked behind me and saw Mordor. He was faltering and it seemed like he was hurt. "You brats." Everyone could now see him. He was made weaker and the dark particles engulfing him had decreased. "You think you can take us both on, Ralph?" He looked at us furiously. He summoned a black sword out of the particles and started approaching us. "I will destroy everything you love." "Yeah, you said that before." We took a few steps back, but he kept coming at us. I tried to focus on what Tom told me. "Creation," he said. I focused on creating something that could stop him. All I could think of at the time was a sword as well, but it worked. A sudden collection of purple particles formed a sword in my hand, and the moment Mordor swung his sword, I blocked with mine. The moment our swords clashed, we were both blown away several meters. It worked. What is this?" Mordor said as he got up. "You're not invincible," I said as I got up as well. "We all have weaknesses." Mordor's anger was a dangerous thing, and when it was fueled, hell could break loose. Mordor disappeared, and in a second, I felt something cut my waist. The pain made my knees weak and I fell on the ground. Before Mordor could attack again, I expelled a purple spherical source of light that revealed Mordor and knocked him away. I got up and summoned a tiny bit of water my way in order to heal the wound. I looked at Mordor, who pathetically tried to get back up again. "If you have even a slight bit of pride," I started. Mordor vanished again. "You fight me like a man, no games." I looked around me and prepared for another attack, but it never came. I suddenly heard Dora scream and I looked behind me. I saw her jump out of the way when the sand underneath her was moving. Hands appeared, followed by heads and entire bodies. Mordor summoned an army of Inferi. "Inferi!" Darren shouted in order for everyone to hear and be able to prepare. "Dora, follow me," I said. She retrieved the gun from the ground and followed me. I took over the gun, turned the safety off and gave it back to her. "Say, how'd you get that?" "Darren. He wanted me to have something to defend myself with." "Very well then, just be careful." "Where are we going?" "To the top of the volcano." "Why?" "You'll see. Just stay close by." As we started climbing one of the volcanoes and looked down, we saw everyone else fight off the Inferi crawling out of the ground. As soon as we made it to the top, we had a view of the ocean and the island. "Morduar!" I shouted. "Coward! Show yourself!" I needed his attention, and luckily I got it. All I got was a simple chuckle, but it was all I needed. "Thanks." I made a movement with my arm and formed a sphere of raging wind, completely enclosing both Dora and I. As I made it enlarge, it changed color and calmed down. Eventually, it got to Morduar, who was dragged into it and his invisibility was taken away from him. All I had to know beforehand was if he was close by or not. "No!" he shouted. We could see him now. He was surrounded by purple particles, following him wherever he went. Because it didn't matter anymore, he revealed himself. The dark particles gathered again and formed around him, still followed by the purple ones. Mordor came at us, but before he could get to us, I protected ourselves with a shield he couldn't get through. I tried to fend him off as long as I could, but I knew and could feel that he was stronger than I was. "It's breaking! We gotta jump! Ready?" The shield broke and purple parts that looked like glass flew by as Mordor broke through. "Jump!" I blasted him away and jumped. In order for us not to trip on our way down, I moved waves of rocks underneath our feet to carry us all the way down to safely. Soon enough, we were on the ground again. Mordor didn't follow us and I couldn't see him either. Suddenly, we felt the ground shake. I recognized the sensation. The volcanoes were about to erupt. "To the boats!" I shouted. But Mordor's powers were greatly stronger than mine. While it took me minutes to make one volcano erupt, he could do multiple in just seconds. It was too late. The volcanoes all erupted one by one. No one was going to get away in time, so I had to do something. "Tell me when you see him," I told Dora. I tried to concentrate and focus on doing something seemingly impossible. Although I kept surprising myself, so I thought, why couldn't I do it once more? I aimed my arms at the sea and made a fluid movement, which I kept repeating. Slowly I managed to gather a massive amount of water and cast a shadow upon the entire island. The calmest wave of water ever seen protected the people on the battlefield from the lava coming their way. When it touched the dome of water, it cooled off immediately. Nothing could get through. I'd never accomplished something as massive as that, but I was simply glad everyone still remained unharmed. I stopped bending the water and looked up. Just like everyone else present that day, we couldn't believe what we were seeing. And I didn't have to focus on controlling it and still have the dome remain stationary. I bent through my knees and shot myself into the sky, piercing the dome of water. As I remained in the air, I collected the water and leftover lava from the volcanoes and formed a ball of clashing elements as big as half the island. I leaned back so I could get enough momentum to throw it into the ocean, but something hit me in my back and I lost control of everything. As I was falling, I tried to get everything together. I managed to reach for the ball before it would cover the island, and follow by preventing my own crash. I used the water, lava, and stone substance that the clashing of those two created as a way for me to move on. I focused on turning the entire wave into something harmless. As it was my intention to make it safe, it turned into a purple glowing wave that made me able to move around swiftly through the air. I tried to find Mordor, and when I found him I set my course. I saw the wave engulf me and ribbon-shaped particles flow past my limbs. With incredible speed, I came for him. But Mordor came for me. And at the clash, I wasn't nearly strong enough. I felt shivers from the darkness slither across my body as I fell to the earth again. "You still think you can defeat me? You are weak!" I ended up in the sand with a high velocity. While it was a blow that took a toll on me, when I got up and saw Mordor land, he turned out to be completely unharmed. But I felt my strength getting drained constantly. Was I really no match for him? Mordor walked up to me, grabbed me by my shirt and pulled me up. "You are as pathetic as your mother. One more word about her, or what?" Mordor threw me away, but with an incredible force. I coughed up blood when I impacted against the rocky side of a volcano. Mordor came blasting at me and ready to fist. I made a cross with my arm and took the blow that smashed me deeper into the side of the volcano. But I traveled through a rocky surface before and knew how to turn everything around me into sand. As I was blown straight through the volcano, I focused on traveling through it. Eventually, I ended up on the other side of the island, clothes ripped and burned from the overheated rocks in the middle of the volcano. I couldn't begin to describe the physical pain. I could barely stand up. I crawled over the beach towards the sea and reached for some water to heal myself with. When I sensed vibrations in the earth behind me, I knew Mordor landed and was coming for me. I wouldn't make it, so I made myself sink through the ground, coming up a few seconds later from underneath the shore. The water healed my wounds, but the salt hurt like hell once again. "You can't keep healing your wounds forever. Eventually, it's going to be too much." I figured out that much. I was so tired. Mordor looked around him and watched as everyone was fighting off the Inferi. Time to change things up a little. Say, Drake, how'd you like your old enemies back? Mordor spread his arms and closed his eyes. He laughed wickedly again. What he brought upon us was a horror like never before. He started moving like an orchestra conductor. With the first movement, the ground of the direction he faced started trembling. The people moved out of the way when something came crawling out of the ground. A necrotic troll showed itself in the middle of the battlefield. But that wasn't all. That wasn't nearly all. A gigantic spider arose from the earth. Despite having no bones, it was stitched together with rotten flesh and dead muscle. Dark magic only kept its limbs together. On another place on the battlefield, a scorpion claw emerged from the earth. As the giant scorpion came crawling out, next to it appeared another human-like creature, Fanime. It was then I realized what he was doing, and I feared that there were many more monsters to come. Ha 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 ha! Mordor's evil laugh was heard across the entire battlefield. People started screaming. My friends were simply thunderstruck. After all, they knew what was happening. Mordor kept moving like a conductor, and with every movement, another monster appeared. A skeletal form of the Chernobog, the Black God, emerged. A cold witch's laugh was heard as a headless Sapans was revealed. I couldn't believe my eyes. I was terrified. I had to stop Mordor before he summoned the rest. I ran at him, but a force field knocked me back. Mordor opened his eyes. Ha 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 ha! Do you recognize them? Do you? I couldn't pause, and Mordor just kept going. It started to hum an ominous melody. I turned my head when the people closest to the water started screaming. Necrotic mermaids emerged from the sea and started attacking people. What followed was another tremble, but bigger than before. The giant from Rio appeared, killing several people in the process. Its roar was painful to the ear. The ground trembled even harder when a rotten earthworm erupted from the ground. I remember looking around and never having felt as hopeless. I never saw something like that coming and feared the worst for everyone. I was completely clueless about what to do. The battlefield gained more and more monsters. Small critters that looked like the snow foxes from Astro crawled out of the sand and started attacking people. The golem and snow owl appeared as well. A giant snake emerged, followed by an outburst of water caused by the beast of the harbor. I couldn't stand still and just watch as Mordor summoned the most dangerous creatures we ever fought. And I knew all too well which were left. I tried to attack multiple times, but every time I was simply flung back. No! I shouted. I kept shouting and trying and attacking, but nothing worked for me. I could simply not stop it. Perhaps if I focused instead of blindly barging in, I could have done something, but I couldn't think properly at the time. And then came the worst creatures. 2 dragons burst from the ground. Despite their rotten skeletal bodies, I recognized them with ease. The desert dragon Mordu and the eastern dragon showed themselves on the battlefield and immediately started killing everyone they could find. Ha 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 ha! Are you ready for the grand finale? I was too late. A gigantic outburst of water came from the sea, destroying all the ships in a heartbeat. The Kraken had returned. And on that conclusive note, a blue flame emerged from nothingness in the middle of the battlefield. As it grew, it revealed the final monster, the Balrog. The necrotic monster merged with the blue flames and spoke my name. Drake! Mordor looked at me and had one more thing to reveal. While all the monsters were the greatest horror they'd ever seen, I was yet to encounter my greatest horror. What's that? Sounds like an encore. Very well. The skeleton of a wolf appeared, and I first didn't think much about it, but then I knew what Mordor was about to do. It was the king of the forest. You don't dare. I could hear Roland in the distance shout. He burst into tears when he saw something unbearable. It was a horrible sight when his brother appeared before him. That wasn't all. When Tom saw his friend, he burst into tears as well. Hung showed himself before him. Another one of Mordor's victims appeared. The lost god Helen. He laughed evilly as he emerged. It wasn't him, but he could do everything he could when he was still alive. His dark powers flooded the land and managed to drag the people around him to their deaths. But it wasn't him. If you do this, I said, knowing what was to come, I will destroy you. Yes, let the darkness in. The last 2 in fury were summoned right in front of me. I saw it coming from miles away, yet it hurt to see them like that. My own parents. I cried at the sight of them. I missed them so much. But it wasn't them. I knew that very well. No. Mordor's laugh echoed through my head as he brought my parents back from the dead. He took a few steps back and left me to suffer. Mom, Dad. I knew it wasn't them, but it hurt so much. I needed to take them down, but I couldn't. I got weak. They kept getting closer, their green eyes staring at me, their bone hands reaching for me, but it all didn't separate them from my parents, or at least to me. I heard a few gunshots and saw their skulls break as their bodies fell onto the sand and they were taken out. It's not them, Drake, Dora said. I know, I'm sorry. I approached her and embraced her. It just hurt so much. I know. As I let go of her, I looked for Mordor. I couldn't see him anywhere. I gotta do something real quick. I'll be right back. Stay with Haru, alright? He'll keep you safe. Hey, I can keep myself safe. I know. I'm proud of you. I was glad to see her smile. The sky changed and the clouds became dark. The night was near. It started raining. Of course it did. The lightning added to the dark, hectic ambience well. The battlefield was a mess. Some of the monsters were being taken down, but the big ones kept causing havoc. I had to end it all. I finally managed to get a glimpse of Mordor. He remained in the air as he looked at the battlefield. He took joy from the depletion of Rosium's warriors. Both he and I knew the necrotic monsters had the upper hand. When I found him, I launched myself from the ground. Mordor saw me coming and flew higher into the sky as I kept chasing him. He disappeared beyond the clouds. As I kept following him and found myself in a bed of clouds, I lost him. The sounds of the thunder, the screams from the battlefield and the rain all faded. I could only hear one particular sound. Snarling. Something was behind me. I slowly turned around and suddenly faced a terrifying monster. I'd never received a bigger scare in my life as that one. A necrotic dragon with green eyes looked right at me, less than a meter away from me. The scare made me lose control of my airbending and I fell down. There was no more terrifying creature than the necrotic dragon. As I regained control, I boosted myself with firebending and tried to get away as fast as possible. Despite all logic, a dragon made of bones could talk and fly, chasing me with incredible speed. I heard Mordor laugh, but I couldn't hear where he was. I wasn't sure if I was faster than the dragon, so I looked behind me. If I hadn't, I would have bitten the dust. I managed to dodge his giant jaws in the nick of time. I made myself fall and fell through the bed of clouds. The dragon flew downwards and was about to catch up. I waited until I would hit the ground, and by timing it successfully, I changed my course at the last second. The dragon clashed onto the ground and his bones shattered into hundreds of pieces. I thought I did it, but the bones simply reassembled and formed the dragon all over again. He directly continued his chase. I used the elements of air and fire to keep myself in the air and boost me in order to get away. I headed for the sea and dove underwater, where I used water bending to boost myself instead of fire. I hoped he'd be slow underwater, but he wasn't. I was. You're afraid. I can smell your fear, I heard him say, despite being underwater. His voice was darker than any voice I'd ever heard. It was frightening. I kept changing sudden direction in order to lose him, but it didn't work. In order to breathe again, I decided to leave the water and return to the clouds. I had to lose him somehow, but it didn't change anything. The monster was relentless and never gave up. I had to fight him, or that was what I thought. As I prepared to attack, something emerged from underneath the clouds and tackled the dragon. Arion. Drake, go! Find Mordor! Arion, now! We meet again. Arion tried to put his claws into the dragon's bones but couldn't. His teeth were unfit to do any damage. He was at a great disadvantage. I didn't want to leave Arion to it. I knew he was no match. Before I could do anything, the dragon bit Arion in his neck. Arion roared from the pain. The other dragon used his sharp tailbones to shred Arion's skin. Arion, you can't fight him! Run! No! Don't forget your destiny. Don't forget who you are. He'll kill you! If that's what it takes. Arion managed to get out of the dragon's grip, but attacked again right away. Arion started spitting fire, but it didn't do anything either. You are a disgrace, Arion. Weak. You thought you could defeat me? I did it once before, Tyro, and I will do it again. Tyro? I only then realized the dragon was built the same way as Tyro. Just like with all the other monsters, Mordor revived his own dragon. It explained why his skeleton was missing from the ravine. Ha ha ha, I'd like to see you try. Both dragons started spitting fire. Tyro's blue-colored flames and Arion's clashed against each other, but in no aspect was Arion stronger. Arion! I had to help. I started bending fire myself, emitting a blast of flames. But it didn't help. The necrotic dragon had no weakness I could find. Taro stopped spitting fire, and when Arian's flames broke through, after all, it didn't do a thing. Arian! The next moment was the beginning of true loss that day. Taro bit Arian in his neck, and I heard Arian's bones crush. It was the lethal blow I feared. No! Taro let go, and Arian fell to the ground. Whatever it takes, he said. No. I felt horrible. I couldn't believe I was losing him. There was no time for grief, though. A bright light appeared in the sky. Both Taro and I were blinded by how bright it was. From the light emerged the most beautiful creature, the creation dragon. She tackled the necrotic dragon and spit gold-colored flames. I saw that it was affecting Taro's skeletal body. Taro got away and both dragons faced each other. There is no place for the dead in the land of the living, the creation dragon spoke. Soon there won't be a land of the living, just death. Mordor will rule and none will live. I will make sure the light prevails, for I am the keeper of creation. I gained a little bit of hope when she came to aid us in the fight, but that hope was stripped away from me when I was shown the dark and just as easily prevail. Despite all odds, despite all expectations, and after a beautiful sight of gold and blue-colored flames clashed and filled the night sky, the one who emerged victorious was not the keeper of the light, but the creature of darkness. Taro managed to stab the creation dragon through her chest with its tail, following up with engulfing her in flames. Drake, don't give up. As she, too, fell to the ground, I followed her. The creation dragon hit the ground with a painful blow, after which I landed. I got closer and bent through my knees as I got to her. I looked at her eyes as she tried to speak. I'm sorry. I was never the one fit for this fight, but you are. You have the heart of a dragon. And those were her final words. I couldn't believe it. She'd only just arrived to aid the fight. I was furious. Mordor was once again destroying everything I loved. Drake, Julia came to me. It's Arian. I followed Julia and looked around at the battlefield on the way. Several of the necrotic monsters were still causing a massacre. As we made it to Arian, who was close by, he turned out to still be alive. But not for long. Oh, Arian, I'm so sorry. I fell on my knees as I saw him. He was terribly hurt. Don't be. She's right, you know. You have the heart of a dragon. I don't want to lose you. It's all right. Don't cry. As long as you remember me, I'll never leave your side. It's indescribable, watching those you love die. I am glad to have been your friend. Arian died that day. I burst into tears. I had never felt such pain, but it didn't make me weak. It only made me stronger. I channeled my pain and sadness into anger and strength. I screamed as loud as I could, channeling all my emotions into power. I placed my hands on the earth, and a purple glow following the surface went into several directions, each towards the final enemies on the battlefield. Mordor was the first to be reached. The purple glow got to him and engulfed him. Everyone saw him struggle as he tried to get away, but whatever it was, it attacked him. It was like purple flames kept him from going anywhere and were slowly burning his body until the ashes that remained were like fairy dust, filling the air as he disappeared. The rest of the monsters were reached as well. The earthworm was reached and kept from going anywhere. It eventually dissolved and was defeated. The harvest beast tried to swim away, but the power I controlled wouldn't let the creature go. Eventually, the beast was vaporized, leaving nothing but purple particles. Sapansa couldn't escape and screamed as her body was consumed. The king of the forest and the eastern dragon met the same end. The king couldn't run from it and the dragon couldn't fly away. The Chernobog tried to fly away as well, circling past the volcanoes, but soon enough found itself not to be fast enough. It succumbed to the purple raging flames and exploded into particles. Everyone else managed to defeat the giant, the creatures from Astro, the troll, the spider, the snake, Venime, and some of the mermaids beforehand. As the leftover mermaids were unable to flee through the water and the leftover in fury couldn't go anywhere, they too fell to my attack. 2 were left. The Balrog's flames were consumed by mine, and the Kraken stood no chance when its entire necrotic body was consumed. Both of them were defeated by the power of creation. The last of them fell to my rage. Helen's body had caused enough misery, and just like Ronald and Hung, they were the last in fury to be taken down. Mordor only had one left. As the sky was filled with purple particles, my rage cooled down when I stopped emitting the purple glow. I got up and looked Taro straight in his eyes. My rage had cooled down, but my anger hadn't. No, no, Mortimer spoke. He finally showed up again. He stood a few meters behind Taro, flabbergasted to see what I did. Taro, kill him! Are you ready to die? Taro spoke without fear. I've never been this ready, I replied. I gathered the strength to show Mordor what I really could do. I collected the sand, water from the sea, air and fire, and formed a ball of elements around my fist. I launched myself towards Taro and gave him a blow that knocked him back several meters into the side of a volcano, breaking several of his bones. And before they could regenerate, I directly shot myself at him again and gave him a fire-boosted kick against the bones that formed his neck. In the time that I summoned a purple sword like the one before, Taro recovered and flew away, but I wouldn't let him. His neck was still hurt and the bones had to get back to him in order to heal, but as Taro was fleeing, he couldn't regenerate. Kill him! I heard Mordor yell, but the tables had turned. Taro was now the one scared of me. I was faster too, now that he was hurt. I eventually managed to catch up and slice his bones apart with my sword. I destroyed his wings and his tail until I got to his head. Before I could deliver a killing blow, Taro started spitting fire aimlessly, hoping he'd get me with it. My sword vanished and I simply blocked the flames as I was making my way to his skull and held onto it. Who is afraid now? I blasted Taro downwards with a burst of energy. He was shot towards the earth with incredible speed. Afterwards, I followed him down. Taro hit the sand and broke each of his bones. I landed and walked up to him. You will never win. I aimed in my hand at Taro's skull, looked him in the eyes and said, I don't care. You killed my friend. And I delivered the killing blow. Hopefully, it killed him for good. After that, I fell over. I had used up too much of my strength. Julia came running to me. Drake, are you alright? I'm okay. I'm just at my limit. Is everyone okay? Julia gave me a worrisome expression. I was about to receive some bad news. Tom is dead. I didn't know how to react. He couldn't fight him, his friend. We were too late. I felt guilty. I felt sorrowful. The battle had come to a standstill. All that was left was Mordor. As everyone had gathered in a circle, Mordor approached us. You. Julia got up and went and stood in between us. She was scared, but prepared to do anything to protect me. Give it up, she said. Your victory over my army means nothing. They are merely pawns meant to slow you down, deplete. Say, how many have you lost? Mordor kept coming closer. I got up and grabbed Julia's hand. The way Mordor looked at us made him unpredictable. I've played with you all for far too long. How about it's time I snap my fingers and pierce the heart of one of you? Let's make it interesting. Purely random, shall we? Mordor raised his arm and put his thumb and middle finger together. No, I said, but it was too late. When the sound of a snap was heard, one of us died. The one whose legs couldn't carry him anymore when his heart gave up with a single snap. The one to die was Gregory. Gregory? Gregory! Captain Barton said, shocked. The sailor's body fell on the sand and just laid there, motionlessly. No! Francis shouted. During the entire process, I didn't turn around to see it. I was too frightened to watch, despite knowing what happened. Gregory, no, Roland said, saddened. I think we can do better. Now, who's next? Mordor put his fingers together again. I tried to stop him, but I was too late again. The snap of his fingers caused the death of someone who had been with us from the very start. Oh, bullocks, he said, as his heart stopped pounding. No, Duzel yelled. No, Lauren said. No, 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 Lenny murmured. Their friend's life ended, as he fell over and landed in the sand. Chop died that day. While Calypso was horrified by what happened, the dwarves got furious. They were usually the calm, loose type, but not that day. They ran towards Mordor with their weapons ready, but Mordor made a simple movement with his arm and blasted each of them away. He just chuckled. This is fun. We won the battle against Mordor's army, but the last player left was one that we had nothing against. Or at least, it felt that way. What he could do frightened me. I couldn't move. Alright, let's kill someone important for once. He took a step towards my sister, grabbed her by her arm and held a dark blade against her throat. Drake? My sister was terrified. And it was then that I realized I had to be strong. She was more scared than I was, and I had to do something. I'm gonna enjoy killing this one. My anger increased immensely. Dora reached out for me, but Mordor held her too tight. Darling, I wonder, do you fear death? I couldn't bear to see her crying like that. Drake, please. The anger in me made me stronger. I felt an electrical current flow through me and my strength increase. For that, you are going to die. And before Mordor could do anything, I shot from the ground, disarmed him, discharged and blasted him away, all within a second, just like before with his followers back when Julia was in danger. Mordor recovered soon enough. Impossible, he said. He tried to go invisible, but it didn't work. The particles I'd infected him with still followed him around. He realized it still didn't work and remained completely visible. Before he could do any more damage, I launched myself at him. He dodged and attacked back. I was constantly wounded by darkness I could not stop. I was able to hit him, unlike the others, but less capable of doing damage in comparison with Mordor. The fight between us two had started once again. It was on me to defeat him. The weather had calmed down, but with Mordor's relentless attacks, the thunder came back. Lightning came raining down from the sky, and the rain had started to come in as well. Mordor and I fought with everything we had in store. It seemed to take forever. I still remember what Julia told me had happened during my fight with Mordor. Our sorrow was immeasurable, our fear of losing anyone else bigger than anything. Our tears were barely separable because of the rain. As you fought, we just stood there. I couldn't stand still for much longer. I had to help, and I wanted everyone to help. Are we going to stand still or help him? Everyone looked at me. It hurt to see their hopeless expressions. You were trying so hard, they couldn't have just given up. Who cares that we do not possess the power to fight someone like Mordor? Drake has fought for us for years. He always fought to protect us, no matter the cost. So are we going to watch, or are we going to help him? The thunder came closer. We could see the lightning impact on the top of the volcanoes. You and Mordor were out of our sight, somewhere above the clouds. In order to get as close to you as possible, we started climbing the volcanoes. The only one really capable of going after you was Haru, but he was conflicted whether or not to leave Dora out of his sight again, seeing as you relied on him for that. We did have to make sure not to go too high. We had to be careful of the lightning. We looked up and saw several red and black flashes in the clouds. Eventually, you both came down. We all watched as you two did everything you could to take down the other, but it wasn't leading anywhere. But then something happened no one saw coming. Not me, definitely not you, and not even Mordor. You were struck by lightning. You lost consciousness in the blink of an eye and plunged into the sea. I remember this sight made me scream as loud as I could. The low chance that you'd survive a lightning strike caused your hope to deplete. The fact that you hit the water from so high up made it even worse. We were shocked. Mordor seemed just as much surprised. It was clear that he didn't even plan for it to happen. We couldn't believe you really met your end by something other than Mordor's hands. We couldn't believe you met your end in the first place. I ran down as fast as I could. I could not accept you dying. I was so terrified of losing you. When I got to the water, I dove into the ocean to look for you. I headed into the direction I thought I'd find you. I had never felt as fearful, as I was so afraid I wouldn't find you in time. I felt sick with the idea of losing you. And I couldn't find you. Or well, it took so long. But I didn't give up, and it led me to find you. I was lucky enough you didn't fall into a deeper part of the ocean. I wouldn't ever have found you if that were the case. When I finally saw you, I grabbed you and swam back up. I looked into the sky, but I didn't see Mordor. I assumed he was bragging about killing you in front of the others, even though he and I knew it was pure luck. Or well, luck to him. As I swam to the shore with you in my arms and made it there, I laid you down. I tried to revive you, but whatever I tried, you wouldn't wake up. Minutes passed and nothing changed. I put my head on your chest and couldn't hear a heartbeat. My fear became reality. You died that day. I burst into tears and felt so lost. I didn't know what to do. And I surely didn't know how to go on without you. I'd grown to care too much about you. Even though I didn't know how to go on, I knew I had to try to finish what you started. I won't give up. I won't make your efforts go in vain. I placed my forehead against yours and hoped to hear a heartbeat one final time. Nothing. I'm going to finish this for you. I love you. The hardest thing I ever had to do was say goodbye to you. Walking away wasn't easy, but I had to go help the others. As I climbed the entirety of the volcano and all the way down again, I joined up with the others. He's dead! I heard Mordor yell proudly. Your hero is dead! Mordor didn't hear me approaching until Haru asked me, Is it true? Mordor turned around as he saw where Haru was facing. Is he dead? I bet Haru could already read the answer off of my expression before I nodded. He walked up to me, grabbed me by my shoulders and tried to make me tell him I was lying. You're joking, right? I never seen Haru as frightened. He can't really be dead. It's Drake. I'm sorry, Haru. No. Almost everyone started crying. They couldn't believe it either. In fact, I still didn't believe you were really dead. I didn't know what to believe anymore. Haru's legs couldn't carry him anymore and he fell on his knees, with his hands over his head. He screamed and was absolutely devastated. Mordor started laughing again. What I wouldn't have given to have been able to stab him in his chest at that time. Everyone felt lost. With all hope gone, no one could go on. Except for the one you'd least expect it from. It's not over! In the middle of it all, Dora stepped forward. Drake didn't keep fighting for us to just give up. If he really is dead, then shouldn't we be shaming ourselves for giving up? No one could believe what we were seeing. Little Dora, the spark of hope during the darkest moment. Despite her tears, she moved the hearts of all of us. My brother lives on in our hearts. He fought for all of us. Don't forget him, but for once, fight for him! Her hands started glowing with a purple shade, and we knew what it meant. It meant that we had a chance. It meant hope. The electricity from the lightning had never left my body. I suddenly woke up after receiving an electrical shock, and lucky enough, it worked as getting revived by a defibrillator. I was left with a gigantic scar. I was impervious to getting burnt, luckily, but the lightning did create a scar from my chest to the palm of my right hand. I knew it'd be permanent, but I couldn't complain. I woke up after having been dead for several minutes, I found out later. Finally, something in our favor, and actually extremely unlikely, yet it happened. I woke up from the dead. I hid at the top of the volcano, in a way that no one could see me. I saw and could hear Mordor and my sister opposing him. You have nothing left to fight for, he shouted. Even if I'm all alone, I'll always have something to fight for. My sister's words moved me greatly. I realized she was a much stronger person than I was. I then noticed Dora's hands were lighting up. I had speculated it before, but now I was sure, and it gave me hope. I saw Dora actually try to attack Mordor. She punched him, but he blocked it with ease as he grabbed a hold of her hand. But he wasn't left unscathed. He quickly had to let go as he felt his hand burning. No, you. I should have killed you both a long time ago, he said angrily. He knocked my sister away with a blast of dark magic. I was relieved to see she was okay despite it. I'm done playing. You all die today. Mordor raised his arm and put his thumb and middle finger together again, but before he could snap, I struck him with hundreds of lightning bolts at the same time. I knew he was impervious to it, but it created a cloud of black sand that blocked his vision. Mordor was left unscathed, but at least he didn't get the chance to kill another person. As everyone's hearing returned after the loud bang of the lightning, and as the cloud of sand slowly dissolved, everyone looked up as I appeared before them. The joy and relief on their faces was indescribable. You won't die, Mordor said, for once with a fearful expression. I intend to keep it that way. The final moments of our battle began. Mordor gathered a collection of dark magic as I tried to gather as much creation magic as I could. We both aimed for each other and our forces clashed like never before. Black and purple particles formed a beautiful silhouette. There was no greater portrayal of the colors of light and darkness, the clash of good versus evil. But pure experience and strength came into play, and it wasn't sure that the light would prevail that day. In fact, I was losing. I needed help. I heard my friends call my name, telling me I could do it. They were there for me. The people I'd met throughout my life were the fuel of my power, the spark of hope and the bringers of confidence. It was because of them I knew I could do it. but I needed the help of one more person. Dora, I need you. She looked at me, unsure of what to do. You can do it. I believe in you. What do I do? I thought of the best thing to say. Create! Dora aimed her hands at Mordor. When she accomplished the same as I, in lesser amounts, a magical force appeared and Mordor had to use his other hand to block hers. You will all die! You hear me? I will destroy everything you love! But we were winning. The magic of creation we both possessed was empowered by the people around us. Like I had said before, Mordor would never know friendship or love, and that was exactly what he was missing. Julia was right. The reason the light always wins is because the dark tends to forget friendship is our greatest weapon. And that day we proved that. Our magic overpowered Mordor. The darkness was consumed by the light. Mordor's end was drawing near. The people around us spoke of wonderful words that motivated us greatly. They spoke for the ones who'd fallen, the faces of those we lost flesh before me, the creation dragon, Helm and the gods, Hung, Tom, Ronald, Gregory, Chop, Arion, my father and my mother. This was for them. It was time. Mordor's dark magic disappeared, of which fragments shot in all directions. He was caught within a tornado of purple particles. We heard him scream out his hatred once more before we couldn't see him anymore. Before he fully disappeared, I faced his bloodshot eyes once more. I was never going to forget the hatred in his eyes, not in a million years. When he was out of sight, the tornado dissolved and all that was left were a few dark particles, which quickly disappeared as if it was dark matter. That final moment should have been beautiful, but when I saw my sister fall over in the corner of my eye, I realized that the last fragment of darkness found its mark. To this day, she still remains in a coma.